What's up, horror family? I'm going to talk to you today about the old sci-fi series called Channel Zero, and I'm going to uh, give some reviews of them and kind of rank them. First thing to know is that it's on Shudder now. So Sci-Fi did this show. I think it started in 2016. Had 4 seasons that ran, I think, each year, except in 2018 they had two. So seasons 3 and 4 were both in 2018. And I can remember when it came on being really floored by the first season and really excited. And then just in the craziness of the world, lost track that they had done some more. And I was really excited when it came to Shudder. I thought maybe Shudder was going to sort of fold it under the umbrella and do some more original content, have some seasons 5 and beyond. Unfortunately, that doesn't look like the case. I don't know if it's proprietary to Sci-Fi and they're just not doing it anymore. But it was a really unique show at the time, and no one was really doing a show like that. And Sci-Fi, of course, wasn't necessarily known for production value or for legitimate television a lot. So it was a really cool program, and I kind of wish they would bring it back. So it's really great that it's on Shudder. Before I talk about it a little bit, I'll just say that I have difficulty with horror television shows in general. And I think the reason is that, one of the things I think is true about fear and horror is that over narrativization can be the death of those things. And so the more narrative you add to it, the more story that you add to it, the less scary it gets. And this is essentially my problem with all of American Horror Story. I don't think, for me, a horror television series works very effectively unless it's an anthology horror show, something along the lines of, I know this is more science fiction or just creepy or even cosmic horror, but Twilight Zone, Black Mirror, those kinds, even something like Tales from the Dark Side. Those are more effective for me because I do think that the shorter, the more condensed, the economy of narrative is something that is really terrifying to me. No explanation, and so I really get bored very quickly when the narrative explodes. And so usually, and this is true of every American Horror Story season, it starts out and it's really rad, and I'm really into it for the first couple episodes or maybe 3 episodes. And then by the time we get to the middle of the series, I get really bored and tired and not all that scared and frankly frustrated and impatient. And so I don't think I've ever finished an American Horror. I think this is true. I've never finished American Horror Story series in the year that it was happening. I would give up probably around episode 6 and then go back retroactively and watch them like I was getting my lunch pail and going to work. So that's my problem with those kinds of shows, and Channel Zero certainly suffers from that. If you don't know, the premise of Channel Zero is they take one of the creepypasta stories that's particularly powerful or interesting or popular, and then they base a whole season around it. And this is a great idea because creepypasta is fantastic, but it's also kind of an idea that negates the very notion of creepypasta, which are these sort of sporadic, user-generated and user-curated kind of scary stories that are originless and also rely a lot on just the mystery of no narrative. Here's something that I encountered and I don't understand it, and then it sort of builds. So taking something like that and then building sort of an 6 episodes, some of them are 6, some of them are 8, it can sometimes derail them, and I think that's the case with a couple of these. So I have some recommendations. I have some reviews on what to start with. They're certainly all worth your time. I mean, I wouldn't fault you for giving up on a couple of them by the time it gets to the middle. So let me start out just by ranking them. So my favorite series is actually the final series. This is final season 4. It is called The Dream Door. And the premise of this is that creepypasta about the ability to waking or unconsciously conjure something into existence that you can't control once it leaves your unconscious mind. So sort of like letting your id out and the different forms that it takes. And in this season, that form, or the initial form of it, is this incredibly creepy ass clown that is used to great effect for the first few episodes. I'm not gonna spoil a whole lot of this. I'll just say that this final season is really effective in using kind of the imagery and the slow build. There is, of course, a story behind all of this that gets a little tiresome, but this season really drives towards the ending, and I never felt it lagging in a way that I did with some of the other seasons, where once the thing was sort of explained, I kind of lost any kind of interest in figuring how it resolves. This one I was really interested in. I think it's also because they connect this spiritual and psychological drama with the, paranormal drama that's happening. And I really ended up caring for these characters in ways that I didn't for some of the others. And so if you're going to start, it might be a good entry point, because I think it's the best, tightest, most engaged season of Channel Zero, in my opinion. My second favorite is the first season, that is called Candle Cove. And the premise of this is a man coming back to his hometown and kind of exploring both his inner demons, also the town's history and the town's past, all through the medium of this really creepy children's show. So you can kind of see the things that make me scared, and creepy kids are right at the top, or creepy things involving kids. And this one is really interesting, but the acting is quite good. And right when I started to get bored by the over-narrativization of it, it had a turn and a twist and went in a different direction. That was really kind of startling and interesting, and it ended in a very satisfying way. The monster in this episode is utterly terrifying as well. I'm not going to really give a lot of that stuff away, but I have a lot of issues with teeth, and I have a lot of nightmares about teeth. So this one was particularly effective for me. So my two favorite seasons would be that one. It's, again, season 4, The Dream Door, and season 1, Candle Cove. The two less successful seasons for me, I guess if I had to give a nod, one over the other, would be the second season, The No End House. The premise of this is, a haunted house with 6 rooms. It changes location, so you got to kind of follow it. And it's supposed to be the scariest haunted house of all, and each room you go into is different, and everybody has a different experience. And in this kind of iteration of that, the 6th and final room that these people enter, that we follow, is kind of another world or another dimension. And so the first episode or two is very scary, spooky, supernatural, weird, and then it just becomes a Twilight Zone episode. And I love Twilight Zone episodes. I have them all memorized. I can tell you everything that happens in them. That's an anthology show, and unfortunately for this season, the Twilight Zone idea, which is the house is memory eating, and whatever it turns, I'm not going to give a whole lot of it away, but it really spends a lot of time being like, what is memory? Memory is a disease, and all of these things that would be really interesting in sort of a 30-minute weird, experimental kind of thing, turns into this long slog through a lot of excavating of personal history. And then they leave the house and they go back to the house. Something follows them out of the house. Then they come out and they live in the house for a year. And it's just like, for fuck's sake. I think I'm done with this. So still, I still say you should watch it, but it gets really tiresome, but not as tiresome as season 3, which I think is the worst, unqualifiably the worst. It's called Butcher's Block, and it is about 2 sisters that move into kind of the bad part of town. They've had some problems with their mom, and this is that creepypasta about staircases appearing out of nowhere leading up into the sky. And that is about as interesting as this thing gets. It absolutely wastes Rutger Hauer's talents, which makes me mad. And the other thing is, it has some really interesting iconography that kind of stay with you because you remember that in your head. But it's just window dressing for what turns out to be this like fucked up cannibal romp through, and every time the narrative tries to explain what's going on, it doesn't make any sense. There's a family, and the family's important in history, but they're also living in staircases in the middle of the forest, but they're also cannibals, and they also are growing. In addition to being confused, I just was bored, and the bar was so low for me caring and being enthusiastic. The ending of it is utterly fucking absurd and ridiculous. It makes no sense. Things explode, people explode. I don't know why or for what reason, and it just kind of it ends with a whimper after a bang, which both are whimpery for me. So, you know, if you're gonna skip a Channel Zero season, I'd say you can skip season 3. You're not gonna miss anything. However, if you're a completist, as I am, this is why open world video games are so hard for me, then go ahead and finish it up. But I mean, you know, bring your phone and you can play on it for a little while. Okay, so that's all the Channel Zero series. Again, they are on Shudder. Worth your time. I would certainly start with Dream Door, go to Candle Cove, and then No End House, and then see how you feel. And if you want to go to Butcher's Block, more power to you. Got some new stuff coming I'm looking forward to watching, so I'll be back soon with more reviews. Until then, stay scary. Bye.